G'day, I'm Paul. Volkswagen is bringing a stack of electric vehicles to Australia, and one of the ones that is coming is this. It's called the ID.5. It's Tiguan size. This is the sporty version, the ID.5 GTX. It competes with things like the Tesla Model Y, the Audi Q4 e-tron. We don't know pricing just yet, but Volkswagen is saying they want this to compete head-to-head with things like Tesla Model Y long range. So expect it to be around that price bracket. Now today we're getting an early drive of this over here in Germany before it does arrive in Australia in mid-2024 to see exactly what it's like. This is only going to be a brief review, but it's a bit of a look at what the interior is like, what it's like to drive, and what we can expect when it finally does lob in Australia. Now if you do want to skip ahead to other parts of this video, please use the time codes that are on the screen, or if you are on YouTube, you can scroll down and use the chapters below. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon so you can find out every single time we drive a GTX. Now, let's talk about exterior design. Volkswagen has a number of electric vehicles and a number that are coming to Australia. So we've got the ID.3, the ID.4 and the ID.5. The ID.4 and the 5 look kind of the same, except they have a bit of a swoopy rear to them. And this one here, the ID.5, is in GTX trim, which is the sportier all-wheel drive version. So what do we reckon about the design? So if you look down the front here, this is all kind of closed off. They're doing this a lot now with electric vehicles because most of the cooling requirements, they have it down below here. So it means I can close all this stuff off. We've got an LED light that joins this whole front section. Volkswagen's sister brand, Cupra, is actually doing some really cool stuff in the logo space at the moment. So they've got their logos with LEDs integrated into them. So I reckon that kind of style is actually a little bit different and something interesting. So that could be something that we see eventually coming here to the ID.5 as well. Down the bottom here, LED running lights as well. These are also available as matrix LED lights as well, depending on the spec. And the spec hasn't been confirmed yet for Australia. All we do know is that it will be coming to Australia around mid-2024. Let's jump around to the side here. I'll show you what the wheels look like. 21-inch alloy wheels. In terms of the design, you've got a machined finish on the outside there, piano black in the center. 21-inch alloy wheel is pretty big, so I'll be interested to see how this actually drives. This is available with adaptive damping as well, so it gives you a bit of a compromise that you don't get with the Model Y. Model Y is just a passive setup, whereas this you can actually adjust how it feels while you're driving, and that should really give it a bit more consistency with the ride and also the ability to tailor it depending on what you're doing. You've got the cladded wheel arches there, so people know that it's an all-wheel drive. Indicator built into the wing mirror, camera on the side there, and then have a look at these door handles. They're very BMW-esque. They sit flush with the body, then you put your hand inside, or your fingers inside rather, to open that up. This is a bit of aero work they do to keep the drag down as the car's cutting through the air. Come around to the back with me. Oh, now before we get to the back, have a look at this. Drum brakes. It kind of feels like you're stepping back in time. A lot of vehicles don't actually use a great deal of rear braking, EVs even less, but still drum brakes just kind of feels a little bit cheap to me on a vehicle that is going to be priced as much as this is. So hopefully they are looking to actually put disc brakes on the rear there and just give this a proper complete braking package, because if you do decide to go a little bit harder, you really do want to have the availability of discs there as opposed to the drum braking setup. All right, let's whip around to the back. So this is where it differs from the ID.4. You can see here it's got a bit of a swoopy rear to it. It's got this spoiler integrated into the rear as well. It actually looks like it could eat into a bit of that eye line, so I'll be interested to see what this is like when we go for a drive and how much visibility I have out of the rear of the vehicle. So LED lights along the back here. There's actually a pretty cool startup sequence when you approach and unlock the car here. It does a little bit of a dance, which is cool. I do like manufacturers that put a little bit of effort into things like LED lighting just to give the car a bit of character. GTX badge there, and then a white Volkswagen logo, black on this lower section down the bottom here. So let me know what you reckon about the design in the comments section below. Do you think it looks good? Do you think it's a pretty good alternative to the Tesla Model Y for this Tiguan sized SUV? Let me know what you reckon in the comments section below. Okay, so we are sitting inside the ID.5 GTX. Let's start off with the things that I'm really liking here. So I love immediately that there is a screen ahead of the driver. I also love the fact that there is a head-up display as well. That head-up display also comes with augmented reality. So while you're driving along and have the GPS running, it'll actually show arrows up on the screen to give you an idea of where you need to turn, like on the road in front of you. It's actually a really cool setup. And then this screen just gives you all of the vital information you need, like your speed, your mileage, how much battery range you have left, and all that kind of thing. So really good setup there, and a big infotainment sort of system plus plastered up the top here. Throughout this review, I'm actually going to be talking a little bit about how this compares to my Tesla Model Y. I know it might get a little bit annoying, but it'll just give you a bit of a good context of what this is like as a comparison to the bestseller in the segment. Now, outside of that, in terms of your materials, so soft touch stuff along the dashboard there with some red stitching, and then as you go down, it sort of progressively becomes a little bit harder and scratchier, but that doesn't actually look too bad. They've got these blue highlights here that sort of match the dashboard and the doors. There is a lot of piano black around here, unfortunately, so this bottom section along here as well. So I'm not a huge fan of piano black because it marks easily, and you can already see here it's dusty and dirty, so it's something that takes a little bit of time to take care of. Also on the steering wheel as well, red highlights through there with the GTX badge. This unfortunately has the haptic feedback buttons on the steering wheel like we've seen on other Volkswagen products. Not a huge fan of these because while you're driving you can easily nudge them and it just gets a little bit annoying very quickly. So that's one of those things that I think that they will change eventually, given they are moving their other vehicles to physical buttons on the steering wheel as a replacement. In terms of the rest of the cabin, when it comes to storage, you've got cup holders up the front here. It's actually a removable section too, so you can take that out if you want it to just be a big open space. More storage down the bottom here, including a wireless phone charger on a rubber pad, and then cup holders as you go down with a little cubby cover as well. So on the storage front, it's all quite good here, and you've got plenty of options there with USB charging for the front and rear as well. In terms of comfort, the seats actually look really cool. So you've got GTX insignia up the top, and then there's like a sort of fabric material in the center with red stitching that actually doesn't look too bad. You've got these armrests that pop down as well for a bit of comfort driving. So hopefully this will serve us well on our drive through the Alps and the stuff that we're about to do. This car is actually part of a Volkswagen driving experience, which is why it's got the stuff all over the side there. We're going to be reviewing the ID.3 and also the ID Buzz as well. So when those reviews go live, have a look at the link in the description below. Second row, what does it look like? Well, you've got ISOFIX points on the outboard seats with top tethers. You actually have a center seat as well, which is missing on the ID.3 and also on the Cupra Born if you do tick a couple of option boxes. There is plenty of room in here, and the thing that I like about this cabin, it's a bit like the Model Y in the sense that there's plenty of headroom and it just makes it feel a bit more generous. This also has a cover for the roof as well, which Model Y, it's an optional accessory, and it means that if it does get hot, you can actually stop a bit of that radiant heat coming into the cabin. In terms of boot capacity, 550 litres is your minimum, and then that expands up to 1500 litres. So it's a pretty decent sized boot in terms of storage things. You get underfloor storage as well. Fortunately, there is no storage up the front though. I don't know why they haven't bothered with that, but that is something that hopefully they can integrate into this platform eventually. Okay, so we're going to kick things off in the ID.5. Just because of the way this drive program is set up, it's going to be a little bit scattered in terms of the way I'm talking about some of these cars and how we actually sort of get through them. We've driven down some Autobahn, entered Austria, arrived at the Grossglockner, paid our €40 toll to get up here. 40 euros, I just don't know that there's any road in Australia that people would pay that kind of a toll to go up, but there was a massive queue to get up here, so shows you just how popular this is and just how beautiful and well maintained this is as well. So kind of feels like you're getting value for money out of that, given they've put so much effort into maintaining it and making sure that it is usable by the public. And we've started off in the ID.5, so I thought we would go for a bit of a sportier drive here to start with, just to see exactly what it is like. So I can see straight off the bat, brake pedal feel is great. It's got variable damping, which means that you can set it between comfort and sport, and it adjusts the ride as it goes. Steering feel is great. You can tell that they've really focused on a comfortable tune for this that is also sporty. If I do draw a comparison to the Tesla Model Y though, Tesla Model Y is much firmer, it doesn't have adaptive damping, but it does feel slightly sportier through corners. This sort of reaches the limits where the tyres start squealing a little bit, and you know at that point that it is down to your sort of tyres that are sort of causing the issue here. My understanding is there is a facelift coming for this, similar to the facelift that they've done with the ID.3, and that's going to bring with it more power and torque, because they've developed a new electric motor for the rear of these vehicles. It's 210 kilowatts, so I think that means this will probably get a little power bump and a torque bump there as well, and that should mean that they stick a little bit of extra oomph into it and perhaps some stickier tyres as well.
Now, speaking of power and torque, this makes over 200 kilowatts of power, over 400 newton meters of torque. It's all-wheel drive, means you have a motor on the front axle, motor on the rear axle as well. So in combination, it really sort of peps along nicely and makes sure that you can accelerate as hard as you need to without any dramas. When it does come to accelerating, it is actually pretty impressive. You get stuck onto the throttle, and instead of it just slamming you back into the seat unceremoniously, it actually does it with a bit of finesse, and it is quite a comfortable way to do it. A lot of these electric cars that have super fast motors, they try and sort of just pin you back in the seat constantly, and it can get a little bit uncomfortable at times. Now let's talk about your driving range. So we left that Ionity charger at 100%, and we've driven here to the top of the Grossglockner and coming down now the other side. We've got 50% of battery remaining and 138 Ks. So it shows you that during this drive, you're going to get less than 300 Ks of driving range out of it. This isn't something that is just here for the ID.5. This is something that's typical with electric vehicles. Their range needs to be accurate, and unlike an internal combustion car where it doesn't matter as much, here it needs to be accurate, and what they've determined is that they'll make it dependent upon your previous driving. So given we've been climbing a lot, driving fast, it has really sort of reflected there in the driving range, and it means that it bumps it up. During normal driving though, they claim a combined economy of around 18 kilowatt hours per 100 Ks, which is actually pretty good. It'll just depend on what it's like in the real world when you're not going up and down mountains. And when we do finally get this in Australia next year, we will test drive it the same way that we do all the other cars and see exactly how it performs up against their claims. And it's pretty quick in a straight line, 0 to 100 in under 7 seconds, which is good. You know, what I have noticed as well in between Munich and here at the Grossglockner, that every town we've gone through, there has been charging. Like, it shows you on the screen here how many charges there are and also the speed that they charge at. And there's been stacks available, and that, again, unlike Australia, shows you that they have really catered for electric vehicles here in a big way. And it means that if you do need a charger, they are pretty easy to come by, not something that you're going to have to travel miles for. Very convenient, especially given when you are in the mountains and range can be a little bit sketchy at times. Now the cool thing as well, as we've been going down the mountain here, it's been adding range to the vehicle. So was it about 48% before, and it's now gone up to 51% and added driving range as well. And it does that because we're using regen. Every time we let off the throttle, it's plumbing energy back into the battery to ensure that we can utilize that instead of it going to waste. Normally an internal combustion car, if you do ride the brakes, it'll end up just using your brakes, and it doesn't use engine braking unless you specifically do. Here you can actually retain that and generate electricity to stick in your battery for later use.
So that has been your first look at the ID.5 GTX. It is a bit of an all-rounder. It does the performance thing, there is room inside, and the ID.5 version of this looks sporty with that sort of coupe line to the rear of it. This is most likely going to get a facelift before it does arrive in Australia, and that could mean a little bit more power and torque and perhaps a slightly different design as well. Let me know in the comments section below. Do you reckon this is a good competitor to something like a Tesla Model Y? How much do you reckon they need to price this at for you to consider one? I'm keen for your feedback. If you did enjoy this video, please make sure you like it and you share it with your mates. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon. But until next time, auf Wiedersehen.